Greetings, Lore Seekers, and welcome to the very first episode of the Histories, an Emberverse lore series. So, firstly, what is the Emberverse? Well, it is a series of books written by author S.M. Stirling, and it essentially deals with what is known as the Change. Set in the closing years of the 90s, essentially what happens is, one night, everyone is going about their daily lives. People are going to their jobs, people are eating, sleeping, continuing the cycle of life that has continued for decades. With very strange weather phenomenon suddenly, over the course of time, impacting the small island of Nantucket. And then suddenly, everything with a spinal column experiences a freezing hot blinding flash of pain, and suddenly everything stops working. All electromagnetic based technology that we've developed over the last 800 years, all high chemical processes stop working, gunpowder stops functioning, and the laboratory processes no longer work. However, strange, fire, all the various processes continue to function. The biological processes that we have relied on for centuries still continue. But all of our technology and even our guns do not work. This presents a slight problem. Suddenly, civilizations around the world are collapsing, some overnight, some it takes very few days before foodstuffs are used and people go hungry, and mass cannibalism becomes quite widespread throughout the country. As people figure it is easier to butcher their fellow men than to waste the effort in trying to find more food. Say what you will about the Joker, he's right when it says people will eat each other when it comes down to it. At least those of a lesser moral conviction. But enough about other series aside. So what happens? Well, this story will tell you the tale of how the remnants of humanity, after their dying years, survive, and what happens, and perhaps even the cause of the change. This series will explain the various factions, things, and characters of interest from the Emberverse series. And I do hope I can do this series justice, because I do heavily recommend that if you get an interest from listening to these videos, you go out and you buy the book and you read it yourself, because it is quite an interesting story. This series dives into questions like what would happen if we were set back to medieval levels of technology, and what we could do with what we have left. It'll answer questions such as what might possibly happen to certain organisations or factions during a post-apocalyptic world, but a more gentler apocalypse. Granted, regardless, with an apocalypse, hundreds of thousands of people are still going to die. And the first few books do focus quite heavily on what the people who found themselves in this situation were able to do in order to survive. Whether you are following a reenactor who mobilises the local gangs of a city, a group of Wiccans who decide to head out to a remote cabin in the woods, or a pilot who, along with his wealthy passengers, decide to form an outfit and head down south back to Oregon in order to reach their family homestead. Many different things happen to each of these groups along the way, and many changes are wrought upon them, and various organisations prop up around them, with the intention of maintaining the ideals of democracy and various things. Well, in fact, one of them doesn't maintain democracy at all. They basically tried to create a protectorate, but more about them later on. But it's interesting to find out with the collapse of society how much a lot of the old ideals have to adapt and change into previous incarnations. Like, there is one character who stayed as the leader of this outfit for a very long time, and essentially, after a while, he was like, right, we need to hold elections, and after someone had pointed out to him that, look, you need to think about what people are thinking about for their children. Are they going to inherit what that you have? And it does end up, what happens to this character, he ends up becoming a sort of Arthurian legend, something that would have massively annoyed this character. But I suppose we will go into all this and more as we proceed to go through the lore. This has just been a brief introduction. I am probably going to do a full video on the actual change event itself. We do find out eventually what caused the change, but revealing that now would be pointless, wouldn't it? Anyway, if you like what you heard, perhaps consider leaving a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you on the next episode of the Histories. May the lore keepers ever be in your favour.